one, and we are live. Hi guys, what's up? This is the 11th episode of Chalchitra Book Reading Club. आज हमारे एक friend हमें join कर रहे हैं. Her name is Shreya Vajpayee. Hi Shreya. So Shreya is a
Hi.
lawyer and she is a friend and she is a very big book nerd. In fact, जो आज हम short story पढ़ने वाले हैं वो मेरे को श्रेया ने recommend की थी. So the name of the book is, again मैं उसकी pronunciation भूल गया क्या था,
Cosmic Comics.
Cosmic Comics, and it is written by
Italo Calvino.
Italo Calvino. Okay. So I'll just Vani, tell us a little about the thing that we'll be reading, and I'll share the link with you guys. Na? Yeah.
So it is a fictional place where the moon is apparently very
spoilers mat dena, please.
Yeah, it is set in a town where the moon is extremely close to the earth, so much so कि आप moon पे somersault करते हुए जा सकते हो. And apparently some people go there, the locals go there to fetch some lunar milk, was it? Yeah. And so we will be discussing about the same.
Yeah. And one of the reasons why I wanted to, मैंने अभी 3 घंटे पहले ही पढ़ी थी ये short story, and I was like, holy shit, after a very long time, something like Ray Bradbury, which is not written by Ray Bradbury. So I was like, ये तो पढ़ना ही पड़ेगा. We'll take turns, and मैं comments खोल लेता हूँ. I'm so sorry, अभी मैंने comments नहीं खोले कहीं पे भी. One second. And he's also like a very this is a very, ये कब आई थी? Do you know when this was published? Anyone?
1965.
हाँ, तो ये मतलब वो Bradbury era की ही है. Okay, why can't I see the episode? Yep, now I can read the comments. Akash Mehta is here. Hi, Vaishnavi is here. Hi, Vaishnavi. Hi, Akash. So we'll start the thing. And who wants to go first? Kyunki, who wants to start? Shreya, do you want to start? Acha, let Vani do it then, because you think आपको समझ आ जाएगा किस zone में हम इसको लेके जाना है. Then it will be easier for you. Vani, yeah.
Cool. So The Distance of the Moon by Italo Calvino. At one time, according to Sir George H. Darwin, the moon was very close to the earth. Then the tides gradually pushed her away. The tides that the moon herself causes in the earth's water, where the earth slowly loses energy. How well I know, old Q cried. The rest of you can't remember, but I can. We had her on top of us all the time, that enormous moon, when she was full, nights as bright as day, but with a butter-colored light. It looked as if she were going to crush us. When she was new, she rolled around the sky like a black umbrella blown by the wind. When she was waxing, she came forward with her horns so low she seemed about to stick into the peak of a promontory and get caught there. But the whole business of the moon's phases worked in a different way then, because the distances from the sun were different, and the orbits and the angle of something or other. I forgot what. As for eclipses with Earth and Moon stuck together the way they were, why, we had eclipses every minute. Naturally, those two big monsters managed to put each other in the shade constantly. First one, then the other. Orbit, elliptical, of course. For a while, it would huddle against us, and then it would take flight for a while. The tides, when the moon swung closer, rose so high nobody could hold them back. There were nights when the moon was full and very, very low, and the tide was so high that the moon missed a ducking in the sea by a hair's breadth. Well, let's say a few yards anyway. Climb up on the moon? Of course we did. All you had to do was row out to it in a boat, and when you were underneath it, prop a ladder against her and scramble up. The spot where the moon was the lowest, as she went by, was off the zinc cliffs. We used to go out with those little rowboats they had in those days. Round and flat, made of cork. They held quite a few of us. Me, Captain VHT, sorry, me.
Just call him just. So guys, this may the story में ना like let's like tell them about this thing. इस story में बहुत सारी complicated names है and the guy also doesn't use vowels in between. So there is this captain जिसका नाम है VHD. So we won't call him Captain VHD. We'll call him Captain V. And अभी basically यही चल रहा है कि he is establishing the universe कि कौन सी चीज कहाँ पे how close the earth and the moon are and they are so close कि ये लोग ऐसे boats में moon के पास जाते हैं. Please continue.
So they held quite a few of us, the boats, me, Captain B, his wife, my deaf cousin, and sometimes little X. She was 12 or so at that time. On those nights, the water was very calm. So silvery, it looked like mercury, and the fish in it, violet colored, unable to resist the moon's attraction, rose to the surface, all of them. And so did the octopuses and the saffron medusas. There was always a flight of tiny creatures, little crabs, squid, and even some weeds, light and filmy, and coral plants that broke from the sea and ended up on the moon, hanging down from that lime white ceiling, or else they stayed in midair. A phosphorescent swarm we had to drive off, waving banana leaves at them. This is how we did the job. In the boat, we had a ladder. One of us held it. Another climbed to the top, and a third, at the oars, rowed until we were right under the moon. That's why there had to be so many of us. I only mentioned the main ones. The man at the top of the ladder, as the boat approached the moon, would become scared and start shouting, "Stop, stop, I'm going to bang my head." That was the impression you had, seeing her on top of you, immense, and all rough with sharp spikes and jagged, sawtooth edges. It may be different now, but then the moon, or rather the bottom, the underbelly of the moon, the part that passed closest to the earth and almost scraped it, was covered with a crust of sharp scales. It had come to resemble the belly of a fish, and the smell too, as I recall, if not downright fishy, was faintly similar, like smoked salmon. In reality, from the top of the ladder, standing erect on the last rung, you could just touch the moon if you held up your arms. We had taken the measurements carefully. We didn't yet suspect that she was moving away from us. The only thing you had to be very careful about was where you put your hands. I always chose a scale that seemed fast. We climbed up in groups of 5 or 6 at a time, and then I would cling first with one hand, then with both. And immediately I would feel ladder and boat drifting away from below me, and the motion of the moon would tear me from the earth's attraction.
So this is like kind of just to give an idea क्या चल रहा है कि जब ये boats के साथ वहाँ पे जाते थे, तो they used to take a ladder there. And ladder के बाद जब उस पे चढ़ते थे, so basically जो gravitational pull है, from the gravitational pull of the earth, they used to go to the gravitational pull of the moon. And you need to like understand how close we are talking about. It's very close कि मतलब अभी कुछ लोग तो ladder की भी कुछ लोगों को जरूरत नहीं पड़ेगी. Like it is that close कि वो जाते हैं. और again, so this is technically not sci-fi because sci-fi में factual accuracy is very important. This is like I say कि जैसे there are a few authors and मैं इसके बारे में पढ़ रहा था इनका नाम like Italo, right? Like it क्या Shreya, what's the name of this guy?
Italo, yeah, just call him IC, you know.
Yeah, नहीं Italo तो याद रहेगा. So this Italo guy was also like he hated when someone called him a sci-fi writer because he thought कि it like lowered the imagination. And that is why I liked it because you can change the rules of physics and you can totally get away with it. So that is what he is doing. The moon is here, the earth is here, और लोग वहाँ पे moon पे जा रहे हैं. Yes, Shreya, you want to take it from here?
No, I'll let her complete that.
ठीक है. हाँ, तो उसके बाद like आपकी chance आएगी. You cannot run away from it.
I am not running away.
Yeah.
Yes, the moon was so strong that she pulled you up. You realized this the moment you passed from one to the other. You had to swing up abruptly with a kind of somersault, grabbing the scales, throwing your legs over your head. and until your feet were on the moon's surface. Seen from the earth, you looked as if you were hanging there with your head down, but for you, it was the normal position. And the only odd thing was that when you raised your eyes, you saw the sea above you, glistening, with the boat and the others upside down, hanging like a bunch of grapes from the vine. Shreya, do you want to read?
Yeah, sure. My cousin, the deaf one, showed a special talent for making those leaps. His clumsy hands, as soon as they touched the lunar surface, he was always the first one to jump up from the ladder, suddenly became deft and sensitive. They found immediately the spot where he could hoist himself up. In fact, just the pressure of his palms seemed enough to make him stick to the satellite's crust. Once, I even thought I saw the moon come towards him as he held out his hand. He was just as dexterous in coming back to the earth, an operation still more difficult. For us, it consisted in jumping as high as we could, our arms upraised. Seen from the moon, that is, because seen from the earth, it looked more like a dive, or like swimming downwards, arms at our sides. Like jumping up from the earth, in the other words, only now we were without the ladder, because there was nothing to prop it against on the moon. But instead of jumping with his arms out, my cousin bent toward the moon's surface, his head as if for a somersault, his head down as if for a somersault, then made a leap, pushing with his hand. From the boat, we watched him, erect in the air, as if he was supporting the moon's enormous ball and were tossing it, striking it with his palms. Then, with his legs came within, when his legs came within reach, we managed to grab his ankles and pull him down on the boat.
Okay, so Himanshu has commented he wants to see a PDF or the image of the whole thing. So I just opened just to give a better idea. Can you guys see this? Vanish, can you guys see it?
Yeah,
Okay.
Yes.
So this is like a few images that I found. ये basically like these are मतलब telling this is the book that we are reading. This is the short story that we are reading. It's called The Distance of the Moon by Italo Calvino, and this is basically like one interpretation of it कि आप moon से जाओगे तो अगर आप moon से ऊपर देखोगे तो आपको sky में ocean दिखाई देगा. And this is like another way of like representing it that there is a ladder and there is moon. So आप एक ladder के through ocean से moon पे जा सकते हो. Again, these are loose interpretations क्योंकि यहाँ पे gravity वगैरह भी है इस universe की. But that is more or less यही है. आगे चलते हैं. Yes, Shreya, please.
Now, you will ask me what in the world we went up on the moon for. I'll explain it to you. We went to collect the milk with a big spoon and a bucket. Moon milk was very thick, like a kind of cream cheese. It formed in the crevices between one scale and the next. Through the fermentation of various bodies and substances of terrestrial origin, which had flown up from the prairies and forests and lakes as the moon sailed over them. It was composed chiefly of vegetable juices, tadpoles, bitumen, lentils, honey, starch, crystals, sturgeon eggs, molds, pollens, gelatinous matter, worms, resins, pepper, mineral salts, combustion residue. You had only to dip the spoon under the scales that covered the moon's scabby terrain, and you brought it out filled with that precious muck. Not in the pure state, obviously, there was a lot of refuse. In the fermentation, which took place on the moon, passed over the expanses of hot air above the deserts. Not all the bodies melted. Some remained stuck in it. Fingernails and cartilage, bolts, seahorses, nuts, peduncles, shards of crockery, fish hooks, at times even a comb. So this paste, after it was collected, had to be refined and filtered. But that wasn't the difficulty. The hard part was transporting it down to the earth. And this is how we did it. We hurled each spoon into the air with both hands, using the spoon as a catapult. The cheese flew, and if we had thrown it hard enough, it stuck to the ceiling. I mean, the surface of the sea. Once there, it floated, and it was easy enough to pull it into the boat. In this operation, too, my deaf cousin displayed a special gift. He had strength and a good aim. With a single sharp throw, he could send the cheese straight into the bucket we held up to him from the boat. As for me, I occasionally misfired. The contents of the spoon would fail to overcome the moon's attraction, and they would fall back into my eye.
Nice. So again, let's explain them क्या क्या चल रहा है. मैंने catapult की एक image भी ढूंढी है कि so basically यहाँ पे पूरी physics अगर आप imagine करो कि वो milk को like imagine like they are using something like this to like throw the thing to like earth और वो ocean में जब जाता था तो like through that they got the lunar milk. Now there are a lot of comments that I wanted to like say. Aman is saying I was waiting for this live for a week. Hey, thank you, bro. Vaibhav is saying moon milk sounds gross. I don't know why. मेरे को तो gross नहीं लग रहा है. Like I am pretty much okay with it. Like I would like to try it. Aman Dubey saying hello. I think the question is for you, Shreya. Like, but we'll answer it once we stop reading the thing. मैम कुछ law books recommend कर दीजिए. कुछ शानदार law books law students के लिए. We'll get to this once we finish reading the whole thing. So guys, again, like ये जो आप लोग देख रहे हो इस इमेज में, आप मान लो कि ये लोग दूध ढूंढ रहे हैं यहाँ पे मून पे, एंड देन वहां से लाइक वो दूध को छोड़ते हैं, एंड लाइक these people use the lunar milk, or this is the fantasy that these guys live in. So let's move further. Yeah, you can continue.
I still haven't told you everything about the things my cousin was good at. That job of extracting lunar milk from the moon's scales was child's play to him. Instead of the spoon, at times, he had only to thrust his bare hand under the scales, or even one finger. He didn't proceed in any orderly way, but went to isolated places, jumping from one to the other, as if he were playing tricks on the moon, surprising her, or perhaps tickling her. And wherever he put his hand, the milk spurted out as if from a nanning goat's teeth. So the rest of us had only to follow him and collect with our spoons the substance that he was pressing out, first here, then there, but always as if by chance, since the deaf one's movements seemed to have no clear practical sense.
Once again ना, मतलब वही like I'm trying to engage everyone बीच में. तो would anyone like to, Vani, would you like to tell us ये deaf guy, like what exactly does he do, so that like people can also like keep up with the whole story, कि क्या उसके पास वो special things है जब वो जाता है, so what is different about the whole thing. So basically वही है कि like the way the skills he uses are like kind of a little better than everyone else. Yeah, and this is the protagonist's cousin, and धीरे धीरे you'll get to see like the relation like much more clearly between the deaf guy. मतलब क्योंकि मैं बताऊँ like in the whole story everyone is named very poorly. मतलब the names that they have like they don't even make sense कि कुछ भी नाम रख दिया, मतलब 4 letters उठाए और रख दिया, but एक ही character का नाम जैसे है the deaf guy, so it keeps like इसका नाम कभी नहीं बताया, but like this character keeps popping up again and again, and he's one of the main characters in the story. So इसकी skills को बहुत अलग तरीके से दिखाया. So जब लोग moon पे जाते भी थे, this guy like the way maybe he procured the milk, like it was a little better than everyone else. So that is what was happening. You guys can continue.
There were places, for example, that he touched merely for the fun of touching them. Gaps between two scales, naked and tender folds of lunar flesh. At times, my cousin pressed not only his finger, but in a carefully gauged leap, his big toe. He climbed onto the moon barefoot, and this seemed to be the height of amusement for him, if we could judge by the chirping sounds that came from his throat as he went on leaping. The soil of the moon was not uniformly scaly, but revealed irregular bare patches of pale, slippery clay. These soft areas inspired the deaf one to turn somersaults or to fly almost like a bird, as if he wanted to impress his whole body into the moon's pulp. As he ventured farther in this way, we lost sight of him at one point of time. On the moon, there were vast areas we had never had any reason or curiosity to explore. And that was where my cousin vanished. I had suspected that all those somersaults and nudges he indulged in before our eyes were only a preparation, a prelude to something secret meant to take place in the hidden zones.
Okay, so I have. Can you guys see the screen? So ये एक मेरे को बहुत प्यारी एक image दिखी, like the distance of the moon की, like I like the whole illustration. Again, like it might not be necessarily true आपने इसको ऐसे imagine किया, but I find it to be very very beautiful. और इसमें सारे main characters को भी दिखाया है, और like ऐसे बाल्टी भी दिखाई है ऊपर ऐसे पड़ी है. So like it's very like I like the whole vibe of this thing, but like there are more images. जैसे वो harp वाली एक image थी, like which I can't see anymore. This is also like very very nice. This is also nice. So is it pretty famous क्या this short story, Shreya? Like do you like क्या मतलब इतनी illustrations कैसे इस चीज की?
So he was considered groundbreaking in how he took concepts of physics. So if you realize 65 is the time where science was making a lot of progression, especially in terms of cosmology. And parallelly, this guy would take the concept. So obviously he understands the science behind what's happening. But then he takes it and has like a completely new spin on it.
So Google ने इस पे एक वो भी doodle भी बनाया था, I think. This is so cool. This is the doodle which they had made for the story, I suppose. But this is one, and Shreya ने hint दे दिया है कि वो थक गई है, उसने पानी पी लिया बीच में. So I think Vani, you can take over. So if you want to take it from there, hidden zones तक पढ़ लिया ना हमने. Yeah. I don't want to like सब मतलब मैं नहीं पढ़ना चाहता because आप दोनों ने थोड़ा ऐसे like मेरे को गालियाँ पड़ेंगी, मेरे को ऐसा लग रहा है अगर मैं पढ़ना चालू करूँगा अभी बीच में. I might read a para or two in between, but like Vani, you can take over. Yeah.
We fell into a special mood on those nights of the zinc cliffs, gay but with a touch of suspense, as if inside our skulls, instead of the brain, we felt a fish floating, attracted by the moon. And so we navigated, playing and singing. The captain's wife played the harp. She had very long arms, silvery as eels on those nights, and armpits as dark and mysterious as sea urchins. And the sound of the harp was sweet and piercing. So sweet and piercing it was almost unbearable, and we were forced to let out long cries, not so much to accompany the music, as to protect our hearing from it. Transparent medusas rose to the sea's surface, throbbed there a moment, then flew off, swaying toward the moon. Little X amused herself by catching them in mid-air, though it wasn't easy. Once, as she stretched her little arms out to catch one, she jumped up slightly and was also set free. Thin as she was an ounce or two short of the weight necessary for the Earth's gravity to overcome the moon's attraction and bring her back. So she flew up among the medusas, suspended over the sea.
So I have actually like highlighted this part because ये वाली imagery मेरे को बहुत ज़्यादा पसंद आई थी when I was reading it. Thin as she was an ounce or two short of the weight necessary for the Earth's gravity to overcome the moon's attraction and bring her back. So basically she's suspended in between, right? Or ये medusas क्या exactly? Like should we
there
Google
are some
it?
Creatures in
Medusa. अरे अच्छा ये तो वो जेलीफिश टाइप सा वो कुछ है जो हम एक सेकंड ये वाला ओके सो व्हाट आर ओके सो व्हाई आर दे सस्पेंडेड ये पानी में क्यों नहीं है
Because there's not enough gravity to keep them in.
Because the moon is much closer to the Earth's surface. So,
But this is such a good image, dude. मतलब और वो वहाँ पे से she's floating like aimlessly. तो काफी सही है ये. We can come back to the thing, yeah.
Where was I?
She took
fright, cried, and then laughed and started playing, catching shellfish and minnows as they flew, sticking some into her mouth and chewing them. We rowed hard to keep up with the child. The moon ran off in her ellipse, dragging that swarm of marine fauna through the sky, and a train of long entwined seaweeds and eggs hanging there in the midst. Her two wispy braids seemed to be flying on their own, outstretched toward the moon. But all the while, she kept wriggling and kicking at the air, as if she wanted to fight that influence and her socks. She had lost her shoes in the flight, slipped off her feet, and swayed, attracted by the earth's force. On the ladder, we tried to grab them. The idea of eating the little animals in the air had been a good one. The more weight X gained, the more she sank toward the earth. In fact, since among those hovering bodies, hers was the largest, mollusks and seaweeds and plankton began to gravitate about her. And soon the child was covered with siliceous little shells, chitinous carapaces, and fibers of sea plants. And the farther she vanished into that tangle, the more she was freed of the moon's influence until she gazed the surface of the water and sank into the sea. This is so cool.
Again, मैंने खुद को म्यूट किया हुआ था. So I found this other image which I really and everything, octopuses and सब कुछ है. यहाँ पे that is command wide. This I think might होगा, or I think the commander is there. This is such a good image. मतलब, is the internet like acting fine? Is the internet okay?
Yeah, now it is. In the middle, we lost you for a while.
Shall I get back to reading?
Yeah, but like I was showing that illustration and I think we can.
Cool. On the ladder, we tried to grab them. The idea of eating the little... Okay, wait, I've already read this. The idea of eating the little animals, okay, cool. And the farther she vanished into that tangle, the more she was freed of the moon's influence until she grazed the surface of the water and sank into the sea. We rowed quickly to pull her out and save her. Her body had remained magnetized, and we had to work hard to scrape off all the things that encrusted on her. Tender corals were wound about her head, and every time we ran the comb through her hair, there was a shower of crayfish and sardines. Her eyes were sealed shut by limpets clinging to the lids with their suckers. Squid's tentacles were coiled around her arms and her neck, and her little dress now seemed woven only of weeds and sponges. We got the worst of it off her, but for weeks afterwards, she went on pulling out fins and shells, and her skin, dotted with little diatoms, remained affected forever, looking to someone who didn't observe her carefully, as if it were faintly dusted with freckles. This should give you an idea of how the influences of Earth and Moon, practically equal, fought over the space between them. I'll tell you something else. A body that descended to the Earth from the satellite was still charged for a while with lunar force and rejected the attraction of our world. Even I, big and heavy as I was, every time I had been up there, it took a while to get used to the Earth's up and its down, and the others would have to grab my arms and hold me, clinging in a bunch in the swaying boat while I still had my head hanging and my legs stretching up towards the sky. Shreya, do you want to read from here?
मैं एक चीज बोलना चाहता था, बीच में इंटरनेट चला गया था, सपोज है ना, लाइक माय इंटरनेट इज एक्टिंग अप, आई डोंट नो व्हाई, लाइक होना नहीं चाहिए था, बट आई थिंक यू जस्ट रेड द पैरा जहाँ पे वो वाली लाइन थी ना, दिस शुड गिव यू एन आइडिया हाउ, लाइक आई लव दिस लाइन बिकॉज ये मतलब हमारे भारत का भी मेरे को वो दिखाता है कि This should give you an idea how the influences of Earth and Moon practically equal, fought over the space between them. तो वहाँ पे भी कैसे gravitational fight चल रही थी, which was like something that I liked a lot. Shreya, do you want to take it from here?
Yeah, sure. Hold on to us, they shouted at me. And in all that groping, sometimes I ended up by seizing one of Mrs. V's breasts, which were round and firm. And the contact was good and secure, and had an attraction as strong as the moon's, or even stronger, especially if I managed, as I plunged down, to put my other arm around her hips. And with this, I passed back into our world and fell with a thud into the bottom of the boat, where Captain V brought me around, throwing a bucket of water in my face, of course. This is how the story of my love for the captain's wife began, and my suffering, because it didn't take me long to realize whom the lady kept looking at insistently. When my cousin's hands clasped the satellite, I watched Mrs. V, and in her eyes, I could read the thoughts that the deaf man's familiarity with the moon were arousing in her. And when he disappeared in his mysterious lunar explorations, I saw her become restless, as if on pins and needles. And then it was all clear to me how Mrs. V was becoming jealous of the moon, and I was jealous of my cousin. Her eyes were made of diamond, Mrs. V's. They flared when she looked at the moon, almost challengingly, as if she was saying, "You shan't have him." And I felt like an outsider.
So यहाँ पे just to give you in context, क्योंकि अन्वेश सिंह बोर हो रहे हैं यहाँ पे, उन्होंने comments में बोला है, to give you in context, basically story कालोनाव की story बन चुकी है, and it's like a love triangle now, where our protagonist is in love with Mrs. V, who is the wife of a commander, and there is this deaf guy. उसकी दुल्हन moon है, and like this other guy is. This guy is into this woman, the woman is into this deaf guy, but the deaf guy is into moon. So इसका कोई solution नहीं है, but this is how the love story is. Anshuman Raj has just joined and he's asking which book is this. मैं क्योंकि कंफ्यूज हो जाता हूँ, मैं स्टोरी का नाम बोलूँ या so the story is Distance of the Moon and it is by Italo Calvino. We are reading that and मैं भी एक पढ़ ही लेता हूँ एक पैराग्राफ. Like, can I take it from here if I have your permission? Okay, thank you guys. So I have to read from the one who least.
Yeah.
The one who least understood all of this was my deaf cousin. When we held him down, pulling him, as I explained to you, by his legs, Mrs. V lost all her self-control, doing everything she could take his weight against her on her own body, folding her long silvery arms around him. I felt a pang in my heart while he was indifferent, still lost in his lunar bliss. I looked at the captain, wondering if he also noticed his wife's behavior, but there was never a trace of any expression on that face of his, eaten by brine, marked with tarry wrinkles. Since the deaf one was always the last one to break away from the moon, his return was the signal for the boats to move off. Then, with an unusually polite gesture, we picked up the harp from the bottom of the boat and handed it to his wife. She was obliged to take it and play a few notes. Nothing could separate her more from the deaf one than the sound of the harp. I took to the singing in a low voice, that sad song that goes, every shiny fish is floating, and every dark fish is at the bottom of the sea. And all the others, except my cousin, echoed my words. Every month, once the satellite had moved, the deaf one returned to his solitary detachment from the things of the world. Only the approach of the full moon aroused him again. The time I had arranged things so it wasn't my turn to go up, I could stay. Sorry. That time I had arranged things so it wasn't my turn to go up. I could stay in the boat with captain's wife. So basically अब एक strategy बना रहा है कि अगली बार जब जाना होगा तो मैं wife के साथ boat में रुक जाऊँ और मैं गुफ्तगू कर लूँ और मैं उसको kind of like I'll try to hit on her. But then as soon as my cousin had climbed the ladder, Mrs. V was like, this time I want to go up there. And यहाँ पे twist आता है कि मिस जो कमांडर की वाइफ है मिसेस वी she never wanted to go up to the moon and now she's saying कि इस बार मेरे को भी जाना है. This had never happened before. The captain's wife had never gone up to the moon, but we had made no objection. In fact, he almost uh, pushed her up the ladder boldly, exclaiming, "Go ahead then!" And we all started helping her. And I held her from behind, felt her round and soft on my arms, and to hold her up, I began to press my face and palms of my hand against her. And when I felt her rising into moon sphere, I was heart sick at that lost contact. So I started to rush after her, saying, I'm going to go up for a while to help her out. I was held back as if in a vice. What is vice? I don't know the meaning of this word. Vice means a metal tool with movable jaws that are used to hold an object firmly. Okay, I was held back as if in a vice. You stay here. You have work to do later. The captain commanded without raising his voice. At that moment, each one's intention were already clear, and yet I couldn't figure things out. Even now, I'm not sure I have interpreted it all correctly. Certainly, the captain's wife had for a long time been cherishing the desire to go off privately with my cousin up there, or at least to prevent him from going off the moon alone. But probably she had a still more ambitious plan, one that would have to be carried out in agreement with the deaf one. She wanted the two of them to hide up there together and stay on the moon for a month. But perhaps my cousin, deaf as he was, hadn't understood anything of what she had tried to explain to him, or perhaps he had not even realized that he was the object of Lady's desire. And the captain, he was nothing better than to be rid of his wife. In fact, as soon as she was confined up there, we saw him give free rein to his inclinations and plunge into vice, and then we understood why he had done nothing to hold her back. But had he known from the beginning that the moon's orbit was widening, none of us could have suspected it, the deaf one perhaps, but only he. In the shadowy way he knew things, he may have had a presentiment that he would be forced to bid the moon farewell that night. This is why he hid in his secret places and reappeared only when it was time to come back down on board. It was no use for the captain's wife to try to follow him. We saw her cross the scaly zone various times, length and breadth. Then suddenly she stopped, looking at us in the boat as if about to ask us whether we had seen him. Surely there was something strange about that night. The sea's surface, instead of being taut as it was during the full moon, or even arced a bit towards the sky, now seemed limp, sagging, as if the lunar magnet no longer exercised its full power. And the light too wasn't the same as the light of the other moons. The night shadow seemed somehow to have thickened. Our friends up there must have realized what was happening. In fact, they looked up at us with frightened eyes, and from their mouth and ours at the same moment came a cry. The moon is going away. So what is happening is कि अब लोगों को एकदम से realize हो रहा है कि जो उनका yes.
Yeah, also, this is factually true. The moon is constantly moving away from
Yeah.
the earth.
Yeah, and something like the universe is expanding वो वाली भी चीज है क्योंकि इसमें एक और short story है which is about that thing कि how the things are expanding all the time. So what happened was कि इसमें moon is now going away and the people who were on moon did not realize it was happening. And यार लोग इतने सारे लोग विच बुक इज इट पूछ रहे हैं लाइक इतना लेट आ रहे हैं ठीक है सो द मून इज गोइंग अवे पीपल हु वर ऑन मून सडनली रियलाइज दैट उनको लग नहीं रहा था दे टुक इट फॉर ग्रांटेड एंड अब सबकी फट गई है एंड दे डोंट नो व्हाट टू डू नेक्स्ट द क्राई hadn't died out when my cousin appeared on the moon running. He did not seem frightened or even amazed. He placed his hand on the terrain, flinging himself into his usual somersault. But this time, after he had hurled himself into the air, he remained suspended, as little X had. He hovered a moment between moon and earth, upside down, then laboriously moving his arms like someone swimming against a current. He headed with unusual slowness toward our planet. Vani, do you want to take it from here? श्रेया के घर पे लाइट चली गई है.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
that is such a nice pose. But in
Yeah,
any
but I think she has frozen and she's not there anymore. Yeah, yeah.
From the moon, the other sailors hastened to follow his example. Nobody gave a thought to getting the moon milk that had been collected into the boats, nor did the captain scold them for this. They had already waited too long. The distance was difficult to cross by now. When they tried to imitate my cousin's leap or his swimming, they remained there groping, suspended in midair. Cling together, idiots, cling together, the captain yelled. At this command, the sailors tried to form a group, a mass, to push all together until they reached the zone of the Earth's attraction. All of a sudden, a cascade of bodies plunged into the sea with a loud splash. The boats were now rowing to pick them up. Wait, the captain's wife is missing, I shouted. The captain's wife had also tried to jump, but she was still floating only a few yards from the moon, slowly moving her long, silvery arms in the air. I climbed up the ladder, and in a vain attempt to give her something to grasp, I held the harp out toward her. I can't reach her, we have to go after her, and I started to jump up, brandishing the harp. Above me, the enormous lunar disk no longer seemed the same as before. It had no longer seemed as before. It had become much smaller. It kept contracting as if my gaze were driving it away. And the emptied sky gaped like an abyss where, at the bottom, the stars had begun multiplying and the night poured a river of emptiness over me, drowned me in dizziness and alarm. I am afraid, I thought. I am too afraid to jump. I'm a coward. And at that moment, I jumped. I swam furiously through the sky and held the harp out to her. And instead of coming toward me, she rolled over and over, showing me first her impassive face and then her backside. Hold tight to me, I shouted. And I was already overtaking her and twining my limbs with hers. If we cling together, we can go down. And I was concentrating all my strength on uniting myself more closely with her. And I concentrated my sensations as I enjoyed the fullness of that embrace. I was so absorbed I did not realize at first that I was indeed tearing her from her weightless condition, but was making her fall back on the moon. Didn't I realize it? Or had that been my intention from the very beginning? Before I could think properly, a cry was already bursting from my throat. I'll be the one to stay with you for a month, or rather on you, I shouted in my excitement. On you for a month. And at that moment, our embrace was broken by a fall to the moon's surface, where we rolled away from each other among those cold scales.
So यहाँ पे like just to give a few updates, हमारा जो protagonist है like he says very interesting thing. Didn't I realize it or had it been my intention from the very beginning? वो basically game खेल के and he's questioning himself was it the idea all along? And eventually अब क्या होता है, the protagonist and the commander's wife, they are both stuck on the moon and now the moon is drifting away और बाकी लोग पहुंच गए अर्थ पे और अब मून दूर जाए जा रहे हैं. Aman Verma in comments is doing God's work. उसने लिख दिया this is a short story by called The Distance of the Moon by Italo Calvino. Please don't break their flow, guys. Thank you so much, Aman. Yeah, please, Vani, continue.
I raised my eyes as I did every time I touched the moon's crust, sure that I would see above me the native sea like an endless ceiling. And I saw it, yes. I saw it this time too, but much higher and much more narrow, bound by its borders of coasts and cliffs and promontories, and how small the boats seemed, and how unfamiliar my friends' faces and how weak their cries. A sound reached me from nearby. Mrs. V had discovered her harp and was caressing it, sketching out a chord as sad as weeping. A long month began. The moon turned slowly around the earth. On the suspended globe, we no longer saw a familiar shore, but the passage of oceans as deep as abysses and deserts of glowing lapilli and continents of ice and forests writhing with reptiles and the rocky walls of mountain chains gashed by swift rivers and swampy cities and stone graveyards and empires of clay and mud. The distance spread a uniform color over everything. The alien perspectives made every image alien. Herds of elephants and swarms of locusts ran over the plains, so evenly, vast and dense and thickly grown that there was no difference among them. I should have been happy. Yeah, Weber?
No, it's okay. Can I read this one, this part?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so now the protagonist is going to talk about his own thoughts because this is something that he wanted all along. He was in love with this woman and eventually he was stuck on the moon with her. And here and this is what happens. I should have been happy as I had dreamed. I was alone with her. That intimacy with the moon I had so often envied my cousin and with Mrs. V was now my exclusive prerogative. Uh, a month of days and lunar nights stretched uninterrupted before us. The crust of the satellite nourished us with its milk, whose tart flavor was familiar to us. We raised our eyes up to the world where we had been born. Finally, traversed in all its various expanse, explored landscapes no earth being had ever seen, or else we contemplated the stars beyond the moon big as pieces of fruit made of light, ripened on the curved branches of the sky. And everything exceeded my most luminous hopes, and yet it was instead exile. I thought only of earth. It was the earth that caused each of us to be that someone he was rather than someone else. Up there, I read this very badly. I'll take this one again. Basically, what is happening is this guy is like, wo jo cheez hoti hai, be careful what you wish for. He eventually got he wanted, but he's not liking that thing anymore because he was stuck at the moon with this woman. But now he's longing to go back on Earth because he did not enjoy. He had everything. वो मतलब moon के perspective से Earth को देख रहे हैं, like everything was very beautiful, but like he still did not feel that he belonged there. I thought only of Earth. It was the Earth that caused each of us to be that someone he was rather than someone else. Up there, rested from the Earth. It was as if I was no longer that I, nor she was she for me. I was eager to return to the Earth and I trembled at the fear of having lost it. The next part I've highlighted. The fulfillment of my dream of love had lasted only that instant when we had been united, spinning between earth and moon. Torn from its earthly soil, my love now knew only the heart-rending nostalgia for what it lacked, a where, a surrounding, a before and after. This is what I was feeling. But she, as I asked myself, I was torn by my fears. Because if she also thought only of the earth, this could be a sign that she finally come to understand me. But it could also mean that everything had been useless, that her longings were directed still and only towards my deaf cousin. Instead, she felt nothing. She never raised her eye to the old planet. She went off, pale, among those wastelands, mumbling dirges and stroking her harp, as if completely identified with her temporary lunar state. Did this mean I had won out over my rival? No, I had lost. A hopeless defeat. Because she had finally realized that my cousin loved only the moon, and the only thing she now wanted to become was the moon, to be assimilated into the object of that extra human love. तो काफी अब मेटाफोरिकल और ऐसे कॉस्मिक लेवल की लव स्टोरी बन गई है ये बिकॉज लाइक द वुमन नाउ वांट्स टू बी द पार्ट ऑफ द थिंग that the guy she liked loved. And so basically she wanted to be there and she wanted to become moon or like because she knew the deaf guy like the moon. So ये वाला जो last line है because she finally realized that my cousin only loved the moon and the only thing she wanted now was to become the moon. She wanted to become the moon because उसको लगता था उसी से उन दोनों की प्रेम कथा पूरी हो पाएगी to be assimilated into the object of that extra human love. Yes, you guys can take it further. Yeah.
How do you want to read it?
Yeah, sure. When the moon had completed its circling of the planet, there we were, again on the zinc cliffs. I recognized them in dismay. Not even in my darkest previsions had I thought the distance would have made them so tiny. In that mud puddle of the sea, my friends had set forth again, without the now useless ladder. But from the boats rose a kind of forest of long poles, Everybody was brandishing one, with a harpoon or a grappling hook at the end, perhaps in the hope of scraping off a last bit of moon milk or of lending some kind of help to us wretches up there. But it was soon clear that no pole was long enough to reach the moon, and they dropped back, ridiculously short, humbled, floating on the sea. And in that confusion, some of the boats were thrown off balance and overturned. But just then, from another vessel, a longer pole, which till then they had dragged along on the water's surface, began to rise. It must have been made of bamboo, of many, many bamboo poles stuck one into the other. And to raise it, they had to go slowly, because, thin as it was, if they let it sway too much, it might break. Therefore, they had to use it with great strength and skill, so that the wholly vertical weight wouldn't rock the bottom. When I read this, I'm actually thinking of this way we used to attach straws to make wands. And then after a few straws, it would start bending around. Suddenly, it was clear that the tip of the pole would touch the moon, and we saw it graze, then press against the scaly terrain, rest there a moment, give a kind of little push, or rather a strong push that made it bounce off again, then come back and strike the same spot as if on the rebound, then move away once more. And I recognized, we both, the captain's wife and I, recognized my cousin. It couldn't have been anyone else. He was playing his last game with the moon, one of his tricks, with the moon on the tip of his pole as if he were juggling with her. And we realized that his virtuosity had no purpose, aimed at no practical result. Indeed, you would have said he was driving the moon away, that he was helping her departure, that he wanted to show her to her more distant orbit. And this, too, was just like him. He was unable to conceive desires that went against the moon's nature, the moon's course and destiny. And if the moon now tended to go away from him, then he would take delight in the separation just as, till now, he had delighted in the moon's nearness.
So what happened now कि after a month when they came back on the same spot, तो उसके बाद a lot of people came back again in boats and they wanted to rescue them or something. But now since the gravitational pull was less and the moon was drifting away, तो उसके बाद जो भी वो rods और वो भी जो भी वो sticks like हवा में ladders छोड़ रहे थे, they were not long enough. But suddenly हमारा वो deaf guy आता है और वो bamboo stick लाता है and suddenly ऐसा मतलब प्रकट होता है कि he is trying to push the moon away with the bamboo stick. Now, यहाँ पे एक बहुत सही line लिखी है which I want to discuss the first thing after we finish this कि and we realized that his virtuosity had no purpose, aimed at no practical result. And or maybe it can be something he wanted that woman to see that he always saw जब वो अकेला दूर जाता था मून पे. So it can be a very वो वाला आशिक वाली चीज भी हो सकती है या it can be totally illogical thing also. We'll talk about this once we complete this thing. So basically वो मून को push कर रहा है. You can continue. Yeah. एक सेकंड ना जस्ट लास्ट चीज सॉरी शेखर इज आस्किंग वैभव सर आफ्टर रीडिंग आप डिस्कशन करने वाले हो यस 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 आपसे सारा भी इसके बाद हम डिस्कशन ही करेंगे एंड वील हैव अ लॉन्ग डिस्कशन अबाउट दिस होल थिंग सो जाइएगा मत शेखर धोले जी प्लीज शेयर
Yeah. What could Mrs. V do in the face of this? It was only at this moment that she proved her passion for the deaf man hadn't been a frivolous whim, but an irrevocable vow. If what my cousin now loved was the distant moon, then she too would remain distant on the moon. I sensed this, seeing that she didn't take a step towards the bamboo pole, but simply turned her harp towards the earth, high in the sky. And I say, I saw her, but to tell the truth, I only caught a glimpse of her out of the corner of my eye. Because the minute the pole had touched the lunar crust, I had sprung and grasped it, and now, fast as a snake, I was climbing up the bamboo knots, pushing myself on along with jerks of my arms and knees, light in the rarefied space, driven by a natural power that ordered me to return to the earth. oblivious of the motive that had brought me here, or perhaps more aware of it than ever, and of its unfortunate outcome. And already my climb up the swaying pole had reached the point where I no longer had to make any effort, but could just allow myself to slide, head first, attracted by the earth, until, in my haste, the pole broke into 1,000 pieces, and I fell into the sea among the boats. My return was sweet, my home refound, but my thoughts were filled only with grief at having lost her. And my eyes gazed at the moon, forever beyond my reach. I sought her, and I saw her. She was there where I had left her, lying on a beach directly over our heads. And she said nothing. She was the color of the moon. She held a harp at her side and moved one hand now and then in slow arpeggios. I could distinguish the shape of her bosom, her arms, her thigh, just as I remembered them now. Just as now, when the moon had become that flat, remote circle. I still look for her as soon as the first sliver appears in the sky. And the more it waxes, the more clearly I imagine I can see her. Her, or something of her, but only her in 100, 1,000 different vistas. She who makes the moon, and whenever she is full, sets the dogs to howling all night, and me along with them.
Yes, so that is the end of the story. Kishore, Rahul, thank you so much, bro. So guys, eventually end में यही हुआ था कि हमारा जो बंदा था, like the protagonist, इसका नाम क्या है? I'm so sorry. Is there a name for the guy?
Yeah,
Sorry?
Isn't it Q?
What? Yeah, Mr. Q.
Mr. Q. He's
so
QFWFQ.
So Mr. Q, who is our protagonist, eventually like fucks off from the moon. उसको realize हो जाता है ना भाई इतना भी प्यार नहीं करता और whatever. Like again we'll talk about these things. वो stick पकड़ के नीचे आ जाता है and the stick breaks and the lady is left on the moon after that. And now eventually वो बताता है अभी भी मैं जब moon को देखता हूँ तो मैं उसके बारे में सोचता हूँ, something like that. So I want to firstly talk about the intentions of these people. Now guys, आप लोग भी thank you for staying जो लोग अभी रुके, because असली discussion तो हमारा अब start होता है. सबसे पहले तो intentions की बात करते हैं कि how smart do you think the deaf guy was? कोई भी? वानी, श्रेया, वानी?
Smart basis, like what?
In the sense कि वो जो भी करता था, was it illogical or like was he shown to have something like जो थोड़ा सा overly smart था और like वैसे?
Yeah, I think how Q talks about the deaf one is like वो लोग होते हैं ना जिनके बारे में सोच के you apparently goes like हाँ उससे तो हो ही जाएगा और he'll just do it better than everybody else. So he was like that. Although I do feel he did not have like the normal emotional quotient.
Yeah, no, but like जो आप बता रहे हो वो जो एक dexterous चीज है ना कि वो तो मतलब अगर दूध फेंकना है वो सब उसको आता था. I'm talking about his mental smartness कि do you think कि mentally उसको चीजें समझ आती थी जो भी उसने last में किया when he tried to push the moon away? Like
I think he wasn't pushing the moon away. वो metaphor था जो narrator ने लिखा.
then what was he doing?
I think he was just handing out the bamboo stick in order to help them. But then again, this is what I feel, okay?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah,
And then
I'm gonna disagree.
Yeah.
And then the narrator explains it in a sense कि you know ऐसा लग रहा था यहाँ से इस point से देख के that he's pushing the moon away because he loved it so much. And I don't know what the intentions of the deaf one were, but because उसके हिसाब से.
So are you saying कि जब वो उसको push भी कर रहा था, she wasn't thinking about the lady at all?
The lady, the harp one, no.
Yeah, okay. हाँ ये तो चलो. तुम्हें क्या लगता है like about like the mental smartness, like Shreya, like what do you think of this guy?
So I feel it's obviously not true that he was pushing away the moon by mistake because he was so dexterous. Like he's been shown as being extremely dexterous with his arms. So he wasn't pushing it. He was one of those people who's like, okay, fine. If you love something, I'm gonna let it go.
Okay.
Yeah. So I feel it's a contrast between the two kinds of loves. And also, I feel that the author has given preference to the deaf one's love, because when he's talking about Mr. Q's love, he keeps showing the kind of problems with it, where, every time there's an issue, there is like a circumstance which is difficult. Mr. Q is okay, like Mr. Q is just saving his ass.
I think it was more of I'm so sorry. I think it was more of infatuation, Mr. Q's case, than it was love.
हाँ, और उसको थोड़ा physical तरीके से भी दिखाया है, like the wordings are like that कि जब उन दोनों की बात चल रही थी. नहीं, but I'm not sure if I agree with that one particular line जो तुमने कहा श्रेया कि if you love something, just let it go. So was he just letting go of the moon? Like, why would he do it? मतलब, हाँ, yeah, Vani.
I don't know if he's letting go of the moon because the jo bhi hai, blah blah blah. But then I feel the way the narrator has explained how deaf one goes about his business with the moon. It's so poetic. It's very poetic. Like it seems like effortless.
Yeah.
जैसे वो अपने आप को conduct करता है moon पे, and it's so poetic. And to see moon go away, it seems as if like a part of him will obviously go away because you won't be able to see him in the same light again. Like he won't be, you won't see him somersaulting effortlessly in the space between Earth and moon.
But do both of you agree that like throughout this thing, wo jo usne bamboo shit ki puri, like when he was pushing away or not pushing away, he wasn't thinking about the lady at all. Can't this be one interpretation ki jab wo usko push kar raha tha, maybe he wanted to see that, like maybe he was doing it for the lady because he wanted her to see the things that he had seen when like jo uska jo relation tha moon ke sath, maybe he wanted her to like experience those things.
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think that he had the emotional intelligence to understand that she actually liked him.
Okay.
I also think he got along with the moon and not people, because that is very, very clear. So I think his actual true connect was only with the moon and absolutely with no humans.
So then why did he push away the moon?
That is what the narrator says. That
उस narrator ने भी clear नहीं किया कि maybe he pushed away. So जैसे Vani is saying कि you think he did not push it away, but Shreya thinks कि he pushed it away. But then why do you think, Shreya, that he pushed it away?
Yeah.
So if I'm not wrong, there's a line somewhere to say that he started spending a lot more time with the moon because Q believes that the deaf one had realized that the moon is now going to start moving away.
Yeah.
And he started spending more time with it because it realized that it was his last moments. But when the time came of the moon actually going away, it helped it achieve that goal of the moon. It didn't think about himself.
नहीं, this is a very nice point because उसको realize हो रहा था अब ये जा ही रहा है, अगर मैं अभी भी इसी के पीछे पड़ा रहा मुनि तो वो toxic हो जाएगा relationship. So I should let it go, like because the time is absolutely right to like let it go. So I think I agree with this one particular interpretation. Or let's talk about this.
You've made a whole kal ho na ho.
Yeah. Like we need to make it accessible for the audience also, na? So now let's talk about the harp lady, the lady who plays this instrument all the time. Like since you guys might have a better understanding of her psyche, what do you think उसके mind में throughout क्या चल रहा था? वो क्या complete आशिक थी क्या, जो कुछ भी करेगी for the love of the deaf guy? And like deciding to stay back on moon, was that also one of the intentional decisions she took because of like portraying her love for the deaf guy? Shreya?
So on that point, I think like I don't really relate to the I'm going to become a part. Like, I mean, I know that the narrator says that she wanted to become a part of the moon, etc. But I think that after she tries so hard to get onto the moon with him and all circumstances work against us, I feel like she just gave up. She's like, I'm going to play my harp. I have finally found my place. I am happy with myself.
Okay.
I don't want to get into the struggle of trying to get back home and like again get into that entire toxic cycle of having to chase the deaf one.
Okay, so मैं agree नहीं करता इससे, but let's hear Vani's interpretation.
So I think she was in love or whatever it was with it.
Yeah.
It was unrequited.
Yeah.
And when she goes on the moon, she realizes the love the deaf one has for the moon.
Yeah.
And wahan pe she's heartbroken. And she'll do anything for his love. And she feels that if she cannot get his love, she just wants to become a part of the moon so that at
Yes.
least in
Yes.
some sense
Yes.
she
Ah.
gets the love of the deaf one. And I
Ah.
also feel that she doesn't want to go back because thoda bahut she must be embarrassed that what if she goes back and everything that'll like proceed from there on. But majorly she stays back because she, I think, wants to be a part of the moon so that she can get the deaf one's love at least like even bits of it if she by becoming a part of the moon.
तो वो जैसी मूवीज होती है ना, वो एग्जॉसिस्ट वगैरह, जिसमें कौन सी ऐसी पिक्चर होती है जहाँ पे एक लेडी की स्टोरी दिखाते हैं, लाइक कोई ऐसे एक ऐसी कोई सोर्स आता है, लाइक विच इज नॉट अ ह्यूमन बीइंग. जैसे वो मिरांडा जुलाई की भी एक शॉर्ट स्टोरी थी विच आई सजेस्टेड यू वानी कि तुम पढ़ना. तुमने अभी तक पढ़ी नहीं है, बट आई वाज टेलिंग यू कि लाइक इफ देयर इज समथिंग लाइक एनर्जी सॉर्ट ऑफ अ थिंग विच इज देयर थ्रू अ थिंग, but and how it suddenly takes hold of you, that energy. मेरे हिसाब से what my interpretation is that कि eventually यहाँ पे वो वाली चीज हो रही थी जो like I think she at that point did not give a fuck कि मेरे को अर्थ पे जाना है नहीं, because when she was at moon na, so the kind of things she experienced there, like in her like solitary like way जो उसने experience किया, like and becoming like having to become like wanting to become the part of the moon, she just wanted to fulfill it. तो उसके लिए फिर वो लव कंप्लीट करने के लिए अर्थ पे आना, आई थिंक शी डिड नॉट इवन क्वेश्चन इट वंस. मेरे को लगता है जब वो बैम्बू स्टिक वगैरह भी आई होगी, बिकॉज फॉर हर दैट इज मेकिंग द स्टोरी कंप्लीट. And it became something larger than just the love of the deaf guy. कि मतलब it wasn't like कि मेरे को बंदा पसंद है तो मैं इसलिए कर रही हूँ, because once she was there, और जो भी वहाँ की जो solitary चीज़ है जो हमारा deaf guy भी experience करता था, in like by playing the harp or like being alone on the moon, she also kind of experienced that thing. And उसके मेरे को लगता है दिमाग में भी नहीं आया होगा कि मेरे को अर्थ पे वापस जाना है, because the energy had taken hold of her in such a way that it's not her, even it's matlab it doesn't even register to her mind now, because she perceives herself as a part of that being now. Yeah, kya keh rahe the Vani?
I was saying the same thing that
Shreya?
Yeah, so I don't know if that entire theory about energy works unless you can qualify to say it'll only work on certain people, because Mr. Q was there as long as she was there, but his instinct to get back home kicked in immediately.
Yeah.
And all those other people who kept returning back, in fact, as well.
पर वो तो किसी भी स्टोरी में भी देख लो ना, आधी स्टोरीज किन के बारे में होती है, द ड्रीमर्स, दोज हु डू नॉट वांट टू लिव इन द वर्ल्ड. सो दिस इज द स्टोरी ऑफ दोज टू ड्रीमर्स. जो सॉरी कमेंट आया था, वो पढ़ूंगा अभी. दिस इज द स्टोरी ऑफ दोज टू पीपल हु आर नॉट, जो किसी भी मुराकामी बुक में होता है, जैसे लाइक द वे लाइक यू सी द पर्सन इज नॉट हैप्पी विद how things are right now, and they want to go to a place which is like far away, and they want to like maybe experience what it feels to be there, because the reality doesn't like basically earth being the reality, earth like मतलब it doesn't satisfy them anymore. मतलब पता होगा उसको कोविड आ रहा है तो क्यों जाना है वापस. So I don't know. Aman Verma in comments is saying Academy Award winner, The Shape of Water kind of portrays this story in some ways. This is actually true, dude. Have you guys seen The Shape of Water?
I know the summary. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So it is directed by Guillermo del Toro, where this woman falls in love with this creature, which is sort of like an alien. I don't know if I should use the word alien, but a creature which is not human. Now, तो उसको अपने घर पे रखती है. Like she tries to and she isn't totally in love with that creature. Or nobody can understand what kind of a relation she has with that creature. But like उसको पता है कि like mentally like वो शायद इतना sound नहीं है creature, but like उसका जो unrequited love है, that is there. So this is a very good catch, Aman. Mentalic Sansar is saying, sometime you should read Marquez The Last Voyage Ship. You'll find it interesting. Okay, I don't know about this. Do you guys know about this?
Yeah, is it The Last Voyage of the Ship or The Last Voyage of the Ghost Ship by Gabriel?
He has just written The Last Voyage Ship.
think he refers to it's a short story. I think we should pick it up sometime. It's very interesting.
Done, done, done. Rahul Raja Singh, has anybody watched PewDiePie book recommendations? It was fun video and also got guys. क्या PewDiePie की बात कर रहे हैं? छोटा यूट्यूबर है वो, हमारी बात करो मतलब 10 करोड़ सब्सक्राइबर क्या होते हैं? Siddharth Singh, thank you so much. Ankit Sharda, thank you so much. और कोई comments है क्या? Now we should also ask that question that has come for Shreya. Aman Dubey was asking कि hello मैम कुछ law books recommend कर दीजिए, कुछ शानदार books law students के लिए.
So full disclosure, I'm not practicing law anymore. I'm doing something completely different. So if you're considering doing law, maybe I'm not the correct person to be giving you recommendations.
Okay. So Aman Dubey, that's the answer there for you. Or like I also want to show you guys the poster of The Shape of Water because I think it's so nice of Aman to bring that up because I'm pretty sure The Shape of Water might be inspired from this story. Let me share my screen, guys. 1 second. So this is The Shape of Water, and this is that creature. He can be like that deaf guy, और इसका काफी ऑस्कर मिले थे इसको, बेस्ट फिल्म का भी ऑस्कर मिला था. मेरे को इतनी पसंद नहीं आई थी, मेरे को मतलब बेस्ट फिल्म टाइप तो नहीं लगी थी, बट इट्स अ ब्यूटीफुल स्टोरी. एंड ये उसको बाथ-टब वगैरह में नहलाती है एंड लाइक, बट लाइक ऐसे ना बहुत स्टोरीज में मैंने देखा है वेयर द वुमन फॉल्स इन लव विद समथिंग व्हिच इज नॉट ह्यूमन, and like it is a very consistent theme which I've seen at a lot of places. क्योंकि मतलब वो मिरांडा जुलाई की तो हम पढ़ेंगे शॉर्ट स्टोरी, क्योंकि जैसे मेरे को बर्निंग का प्लॉट याद आ रहा है. बर्निंग में she used to talk about this theory like where that she wants to go to somewhere else, or like उसका the hunger, the great hunger. She used to use this term, the great hunger. How the great hunger is something that she always like see. Great hunger is the hunger for like those things जो reality से जुड़ी हुई नहीं होती. And मतलब मैं वो पूछ रहा हूँ the way like is this a correct interpretation जैसे women को mostly दिखाते हैं authors कि they seek something which is not a part of reality. And I am saying this particularly क्योंकि मुझे लगता है women का ये लोग ज़्यादा दिखाते हैं. मिरांडा जुलाई being a female author उसने भी ये दिखाया था, बर्निंग में भी ये था जो मुराकामी ने लिखा था, इस स्टोरी में भी जो हार्प लेडी दिखाई है, like she is seeking something and वो eventually moon का पार्ट बन जाती है. Because I think this is a consistent theme. Have you guys also noticed it in some form or the other? Mani?
Yeah, I don't know why that happens, but I think that's like if you read the novels, like most of the books also have a very so women are shown to be more flexible, and I think it also has to do a lot with from where they come, like from like I wouldn't say ki jo bhi hai, but we had to fight for rights and everything, blah blah blah. So in a way, a lot of people, a lot of artists show women as something that's very flexible. So we are not they don't usually bind you to just one particular thing. I don't know if that makes sense right now, but like you said ki they are made to fall in love like
हाँ नहीं मतलब मैं इसको वैसे नहीं दिखा रहा कि क्यों किया जाता है. जैसे रेडिट पे एक सब रेडिट है ना, men writing women. आई एम नॉट शोइंग इट एज अ फॉल्ट, आई एम शोइंग इट एज समथिंग ब्यूटीफुल जो मेरे को लगता है कि डूड दिस इज सो कूल कि मतलब मे बी सारे मर्द शायद बुद्धू होते हैं वगैरह. मतलब अब like having a thing for the deaf guy also, like it's kind of interesting, right? Like the things like which fascinates them, और ये जो moon है और like some exterior kind of a thing, मतलब वो मेरे को बहुत fascinating लगता है. श्रेया, do you have anything to add here?
Yeah, I think that point about men writing women and is usually true because just how the society functions and how certain ideas are just expected out of women. And whenever, I mean, I'm becoming a feminist, so like we'll just get out of this.
Yeah.
नहीं मैं वो अच्छा, but like मेरा वो नहीं था कि ठीक है, like let's move further. someone in comments is saying I agree it shouldn't have won best film. Three Billboards was much better. ये मैंने मेरे episode में भी कहा था. And have you guys watched Synecdoche New York? If not, please do. Yes, we have. And आज फिलिप सीमोर हॉफमैन का बर्थडे भी है. किसी ने ऊपर भी कमेंट किया था कि मैंने कौन से एपिसोड में उसकी बात की थी. I actually don't remember in which episode I talked about Philip Seymour Hoffman. But if you search for Chalchitra Talks Philip Seymour Hoffman, you will get the episode. Google SEOs are amazing. So I think Karthik Sharma has paid us $20 in super chats. I loved Shape of Water. Thank you so much, Karthik. We ask this to every person जो आता है हमारे शो पे और जो भी हमें पैसे भी मिलते रहते हैं 20-20 रुपए देते हैं. You know, Shreya, we earn money through doing these lives. We just earn $20. We'll buy Lays. Now the question is, which is your favorite Lays? Which flavor is your favorite Lays?
This is, it gets a lot of mixed reactions, but I really like that orange Lays.
That is the only flavor that I hate. That is, I will have any flavor of Lays but that. और कुछ लोग उसकी कितनी core community वो भाग तो होते हैं यार orange के भाग होते हैं.
It's a cult.
Yeah.
Also that.
Yeah. Okay. On that note, let's not try to go that deep into it. अभी लोगों ने पैसे तेरे चालू किए भाग जाएंगे so. But I hope was this fun for you, Shreya?
Yeah, definitely.
Nice. So प्रियांश कुमार जी अभी आए हैं. वो कह रहे हैं लेट हो गए आज. And yes, I'm sorry आज हमने जल्दी भी चालू किया था. तो but आज सारे वेले बैठे थे तो हमने कहा why not. So but thank you so much for joining, guys. Like, do you want to do the brain picking thing, Vani? Because वो work तो कर रहे हैं जो हमने plan किया था.
Good, I mean.
Yeah. So Shreya, like
everyone is available.
Shreya, do you have to leave abhi because we experiment after like the Q&A, like, or do you have some time?
No, sure. I'm here.
Okay. Hey Priya, Pranshu Sharma just paid us $100. Thank you so much, Pranshu.
I've laced it back there.
Yeah. Shreya is like nice. Like maybe I should also start.
Now I can no. And now I'm thinking I can actually get my own Lay's packet without a lot of lobby for it.
Aman Verma is saying, I absolutely agree with Vani. The female gender is clearly more emotionally credible than the opposite gender. Now, guys, last time हमने क्या किया था? हमने aliens draw किए थे. Like, do you? तो क्या करना चाहिए Vani? Like, I'll like.
No. If we whatever.
Do you want to do the letter
Shreya
thing?
is the guest. What do you feel like doing, Shreya?
नहीं तो श्रेया को तो अभी पता नहीं है ना कि हम किस like श्रेया को options तो दो.
Put away the responsibility.
Okay, you're trying to put away the responsibility. So let's try to research about this guy a little. बंदे का नाम बताना. Italo
Calvino.
हाँ. Italo Calvino. इसका brain pickings पे पढ़ते हैं. So we have this ritual whenever we run out of content, we open brain pickings and we start reading stuff from there and people like it.
So there are.
Okay. Italo Calvino on racial justice, the psychology of what makes a great story. Let's read this. The Art of Quickness, Italo Calvino on digression as hedge against death and the key to great writing. And Italo Calvino on unbearable lightness of language, literature. काफी मतलब मारिया पोपोवा पसंद करती है मतलब बंदे को. The psychology of what makes it like okay. Is this Italo Calvino? I think he died in 2005. Yeah.
He died in 1980.
Vani, you were suggesting ना कि एक short film भी पढ़ी. Short film रहा. Let's watch this. पहले I will have to share my screen again. So कितनी देर की है वो short story? हम थोड़ी सी चलाएंगे. अगर मैं
I'll have to see.
Yeah. Now I'll share my screen.
I think it's 8 minutes long. 8 minutes 37 seconds.
Oh shit! Let me share my screen again. Google Chrome, share computer sound. Cool.
But I think it's an Israeli short film.
The distance
from the moon.
from
Italo
the
Calvino.
Okay, this one, how far is the moon?
I think the
this
8
one.
minutes 37 seconds.
Yeah, I think this is the one. Let's watch it, guys. Agar copyright issue aata hai, so then we'll blame Vani for this. And we also have a lawyer today joining us, so so I think we'll be good only. She'll take care of us. ठीक है. Can you guys hear the audio? अभी तक शायद आया नहीं audio.
No, I don't think so.
ये तो थोड़ा okay.
הירח כמעט נרטב מן הים.
वो पीछे एलेक्ट्रिसिटी का म्यूजिक यूज किया है. I was actually playing this music today while reading the short story. Like mostly जब भी मैं short stories या कुछ भी पढ़ रहा होता हूँ, जैसे मेरा मुराकामी के लिए रूल है, In the Mood for Love का soundtrack बजाओ, and for everything else always play electricity का music.
בן דודי החרש, גברת ודווד.
וד कुछ भी बोलती हो.
ואני. ולעיתים גם סלק הילדה, שהייתה אז כבת 12. מה לכל הרוחות חיפשנו על הירח? הלכנו להביא משם חלב. חלב הירח היה סמיך מאוד. הוא היה עשוי בעיקר מעסיס ירקות, ראשני צפרדעים, אבקת פרחים, תולעים, מלחי מחצבים ושרידי מדורות. מובן שהחומר לא היה טהור. אחרי תהליך הסינון אפשר היה למצוא ציפורניים ורקמות, סחוס, מסמרים, סוסוני ים ולעיתים אפילו מסרק. כך החל סיפור אהבתי לאישה הזאת. תוך זמן קצר הבנתי במי התבוננה הגברת בכיליון עיניים. קראתי בעיניה את המחשבות שעלו בה למראה הקרבה והאינטימיות בין החרש והלבנה. ובשעה שנעלם למסעותיו המסתוריים, הבחנתי ששלוותה מופרת. אז הבנתי הכל. איך התעוררה קנאתה של גברת ודווד בלבנה, ואיך אני התחלתי לקנא בבן דודי. היום גם אני רוצה לעלות לשם, אמרה הגברת. ראיתם אותו? היא שאלה. בן דודי היה שקוע בענייניו. למעשה, הוא לא הבחין בכלום, חוץ מהלבנה, אהבתו היחידה. בלי ספק היה משהו חריג באותו לילה. מה קורה לירח? הוא מתרחק. איפה הגברת? קראתי. האישה ניסתה גם היא לקפוץ כמו החרש, אך נותרה מרחפת מטרים אחדים מפני הירח. בלי לחשוב, טיפסתי במהירות והושטתי לה את הנבל שלה, שתוכל להיאחז במשהו. היה עליי להיות מאושר. סוף סוף, היא ואני, לבד, מרוחקים מהכל. עכשיו חשבתי לעצמי, אזכה ליהנות מהקרבה אליה, כמו הקרבה שבין החרש והלבנה, שגרמה לי לקנא כל כך. היה לפנינו חודש של ימים ולילות ירח. לנגד עינינו חלפו אוקיינוסים עמוקים, מדבריות לבה לוהטים, יבשות שלג וקרח, חומות סלע, שרשראות הרים וביניהם נהרות שוצפים, ערי ביצה, ערי קברים עשויות טוף, ואימפריות של חימר וטיט. חשבתי רק על העולם שבאנו ממנו. שם למעלה, כאילו אני כבר לא הייתי אותו אני, וגם היא לא הייתה אותה אישה. השתוקקתי לשוב אל האדמה, וחששתי שאבדה לי לעולמים. והיא, כלום. היא לא הרגישה כלום. היא לא שלחה אפילו מבט אחד אל כוכב הלכת הישן שלנו. היא הבינה כנראה שהחירש אוהב אך ורק את הלבנה, וכעת רצתה להתחבר לירח ולהיות בעצמה ללבנה. כאשר השלים הירח את הקפתו, מצאתי שאנחנו שוב באותה נקודה. לא האמנתי שהתרחקנו כל כך. הסירה שלנו נראתה קטנה, קטנה. ופתאום, בן דודי, הוא ולא אחר. הרי כל כך אהב את הלבנה. אם נטטה עכשיו להתרחק, קיבל את זה, וליווה את התרחקותה כפי שנהנה קודם מקרבתה. ואני לא היססתי יותר. סוף סוף. נעצתי את עיניי בירח המתרחק וחיפשתי אחריה. ראיתיה שם שהיה נדמה לי, במקום שבו השארתי אותה. היא הייתה לבדה. כך אני זוכר אותה אפילו היום. בשעה שהלבנה היא עיגול שטוח ורחוק, עיניי לפעמים תרות אחריה. וכשהירח מלא, הכלבים בחוץ מייללים, ואני בלי קול איתם.
खत्म हो गई ना? This was nice, dude. काफी अच्छी थी ना ये तो?
Yeah, I love the narrator.
Yeah, the narrator was good.
Yeah,
And
I didn't understand a thing he said, but he was like, I wish I knew Israeli or whatever language it was.
मेरे को एक चीज बताओ, why was the protagonist like portrayed in the way he was portrayed? मतलब इसको ऐसे अजीब सा creature क्यों दिखाया? Everyone else was so मतलब lean and maybe kind of more like kind of better looking. Why did he choose to? ये उसकी interpretation थी ना? Were you also imagining the protagonist like that?
No, I was not. I mean, even the woman, she had like ulta heart and and the deaf one had a moon.
Yeah. Tripping on cinema is saying in comments, pretty enchanting animation evokes a sense of longing. True. Shahrukh Kalingal, hi bro, hi. Aman Verma is asking, guys, was Mr. Q the narrator? I'm still confused. I think he asked us before we played the video. I'm pretty sure he was the narrator. Yes.
Yeah.
Any thoughts about the movie? मतलब the short film we saw, कोई चीज जो ऐसा लगा हो कि he got like really nicely. Shreya, कोई चीज? How did you like it?
So for me, the last line was very, very important of the story, which he just changes in the short film. Because the narrator here in the book says that he was howling with the dogs, like he was still longing for her so much. And there in the short film, he changes it more. He makes it less active and engaging in that sense. He says he was there with the dog, silently looking at the movie.
I think
maybe that's just bad translation.
No, subtitles में I think आया था, howling with the dogs आया था, और नहीं आया था, I don't know.
It wasn't as good as the. I don't remember it as well. जैसा हमने पढ़ा था. it was definitely something that was different.
हाँ. प्रांशु शर्मा ने हमें 100 रुपए सुपर चैट्स में देने के बाद बोला है नाउ यू कैन गो फॉर प्रिंगल्स. Nice.
Thanks for the upgrade.
But हाँ यार, this was nice and I like मतलब overall जैसे बनाई है ना, it's very well directed and everything. मतलब I hope इसकी quality थोड़ी ज़्यादा better होती. But वो moon वाला जो था face, that was the deaf guy, right?
Yeah, the half, whatever you call it, crescent.
Yeah. This was nice. So I think we can end the stream here, and I hope you guys liked it. Shahrukh is saying I joined at the end. You missed it, but bro, हम वीडियो नहीं हटाएंगे unless and until copyright issue आता है और हमें जाना पड़ता है कट करो में मतलब. Then Shreya is going to also help us fight a case if we get a copyright issue for playing that video. But I'm pretty sure नहीं आएगा. And I hope you guys liked it, and thank you so much Shreya for joining us. And Vani, shall we end it?
Yeah.
Chalo. See you guys soon. Chalo. Bye. Bye, Vani. Bye, Shreya.
Bye.